नमस्कार, मेरा नाम है हर्षवर्धन सिंह। आप देख रहे हैं MSTV और शो है रूबरू। हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं आराध्य मल्होत्रा जी। दिल्ली के रहने वाले हैं, अभी US में रहते हैं, मियामी में। बड़ी खूबसूरत सी जगह है और गेम बनाते हैं। ये बड़ा ही एक आसान भाषा में मैंने उनका परिचय आपको दिया। गेम्स बड़े ही खूबसूरत तरीके से बनाते हैं, क्योंकि अभी तक का जो एक समझ रही है अभी तक की भारतीय समाज में, और स्पेशली इन इंडिया, मेजॉरिटी आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट, बहुतायत में समझ ये रही है कि अगर आप गेम्स खेलेंगे, डिजिटल वीडियो गेम्स की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, तो आपका समय बर्बाद होगा, आपकी आंखें ख़राब होंगी, आप कुछ सीखने से ज़्यादा उग्र हो जाएंगे, आप मूडी हो जाएंगे। ये सारी ना कुछ चीज़ें जुड़ी रही। अब एक गेम ऐसा आता है जो आपको सोशल साइकोलॉजी के बारे में है, जो आपको सोसाइटी के बारे में बता रहा है। एक गेम ऐसा है जो हेल्थ केयर के बारे में बता रहा है कि स्पेशल नीड्स अगर किसी बच्चे की है तो उसको, उसके साथ आप कैसे रह सकते हैं, नॉट टू डील बट हाउ टू बी विद दैट चाइल्ड। उसी के साथ कुछ ऐसे ऐसे गेम्स हैं जो फाइनेंशियल करप्शन अगर कहीं होता है तो उसको टेक डाउन करने में, उसको उसकी जड़ तक जाने में मददगार साबित होता है। तो दिस अ होल न्यू वर्टिकल, दिस अ होल न्यू एस्पेक्ट, पर्सपेक्टिव एक अलग है गेम्स का, जो कि वो लेकर आए हैं। और फिलहाल CEO है रिपोर्ट टू अर्न, एक बहुत ही, और मैंने जिधर हल्की सी नज़र घुमाई वो इसलिए क्योंकि ही इज़ वेयरिंग अ टी-शर्ट। रिपोर्ट टू अर्न थोड़ी नई सी एक चीज़ है, थोड़ी एक अलग सा कंसेप्ट है भारत के लिहाज से, बट शायद एक फीजिबल कंसेप्ट भी है और आने वाले समय में एक अच्छा काम भी कर सकता है। तो इस सारी चीज़ें उनसे समझेंगे, चलते हैं और बात करते हैं। हेलो एंड वेलकम आराध्य।
Thank you so much.
हाउ आर यू?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm feeling really, like, I'm hopeful in a sense that this whole vertical, this is whole perspective of looking at games from a point from where we can take something out, not only just for us but for a society. So I just want to understand that. So Aradhya, tell me, how does this work? What's this place and what's this podium or pedestal from which you were looking at games, turning it into something very fruitful?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. So to kick off things, I think you articulated very well कि जो वीडियो गेम है ना, उसका कॉन्सेप्ट बदल गया है। लोगों को लगता है गेम सिर्फ बच्चों के लिए होती है। As I was mentioning to you, behind the scenes, today there are over 3 billion people playing a video game,
Right.
some form or the other. There are more gamers over the age of 51 than under the age of 18, and the average age of a gamer is 35 globally.
Okay.
Now, coming to your question, traditionally speaking, these games have only been used as an entertainment product.
Right.
बस, मस्ती के लिए. But people don't realize the power these games have psychologically in order to motivate behavior. And what we're trying to do here is to understand the power of that medium. Like film, it influences you in certain ways. Games do that to the next level because you're interacting and being a part of it. So looking at games as a medium versus an end product is the fundamental of what we've tried to focus on, and specifically driving the behavior towards social good without necessarily thinking that it's a burden or that it is some kind of evangelism.
Okay.
So again, hope I answered your question. We are looking at it as a medium for social change which drives human behavior towards positive outcomes in many different verticals, as you mentioned.
I don't want to take any specific name of any game, but my knowledge is coming entirely from India and this northern region of India. There are few games, when they came into the market, there was a debate, there was some sort of like under the table conference, people were talking about it in a way that this is actually hampering a child's psychology. In a way, they are getting very agitated and they're angry for the entire time, they're getting moody. That's the debate.
Yeah.
And I understand that the games have a really strong ability, they have the power to influence somebody's psyche, their mood, to be specific. What's that particular thing you were changing in it which is turning the entire thing, like it's a U-turn sort of a thing? What's that one thing that is shifting?
So I think the key point, जो सबसे ज़रूरी चीज़ है कि any technology, whether it is social media, whether it is television, whether it is mobile phones or now video games, inherently is not good or bad. It's only a medium.
Exactly.
It is how it is leveraged. उसको किस direction में लेके जाओगे, उससे फर्क पड़ता है. So what you were saying is that people are getting agitated, people are getting angry, kids are, feeling some kind of a negative way, essentially. The game in itself is only doing the job of creating an emotion or creating an impact. Right? So to your point, that same power is what we're leveraging in the U-turn direction or in a positive direction. So that same power, and again, I'll give you a very simple example. You can watch a movie, right? Just have fun and be done with it. You can watch a movie and learn about a deep topic. You can watch a movie and cry about it or feel happy about it, right? So the form factor of the movie has a way of creating emotion. What that emotion is, what you do with the movie essentially, and how it changes behavior, that is up to the creator. Similarly, for games, it is movies plus even more, because like I mentioned, you are actually in control, you're acting on it. So talking about the India example, yeah, there have been traces of people playing video games that are violent and causing real violence.
Right, exactly.
And now we want to turn that around, right? If we turn that into something positive, using the same power, that is the goal and the aim of the institution I was telling you about that I created called Skyless Game Studios.
I just need to understand one thing, that what is the ratio, if we are talking about this, that how an individual is leveraging it or how one is absorbing it. So there are two parties. One is the creator, one is absorbent, or the customer, let's say, for that matter. What's the ratio? 60-40, 80-20? Like when something is being created, like the way you are talking about the games that you have created, which has a very positive impact. But again, this whole question comes of the usability, how someone is using it. Again, so how exactly are we mentioning or keeping the ratio in mind that you created something really good for the betterment, but somebody out there is using it for something negative? So by keeping that thing.
Yeah, so you can actually add guardrails as to how people can use it, which again has an upside and a downside, right? If you create something which is essentially meant to be in a certain way,
right?
Sometimes just the way that you package it might actually have a counter effect. Like if you call something an educational game, as an example, people will play FIFA or whatever they want to play, they will not play the educational game. But if you create something that is fun, answering your question, a lot of the behavior, I would say 80% of the behavior, you can actually drive the way that you want it through different guardrails without the player realizing, essentially, or the customer realizing essentially that what they're doing is contributing or giving them some kind of positive learning in the beginning. Then comes a part where they actually realize what they're doing, they take pride and see the results in what they're doing, and then they want to do it more. It all actually turns into something which is very scientific. The science behind it is very hormonal. It's around the oxytocin levels and
all the hormones, dopamine, testosterone, like
exactly. So it's very deep rooted in terms of science, and you can control the narrative a lot through that medium. But the idea is not just to control, but it is to actually empower people to realize that, and again, consume it, then know that they're consuming it, and then enjoy it, realizing that the time that they're spending is actually leading to a positive result.
Arad, one more thing I need to understand, then we'll shift to the different topic.
Sure.
It is about when you just mentioned about the games, and at the same time, it's about how somebody is using it, totally understandable. But you mentioned about something which is very much scientific and which is very much medical term, no? Medical in the sense, you talked about hormones and how's it working. I just need to know, how did you tested it? What was the process with which you came down to a conclusion on which you are standing right now?
Sure. So I have a little bit of background in psychology as a part of my formal education.
Okay.
Which is where I guess the thesis started. But the products that we created, whether you mentioned, the product for kids with different abilities, right? Or the anti-corruption investigation training. What we fundamentally did was that our role was to create the perfect package or the perfect game that is fun and consumable. What we didn't try and do was become experts at the science or the subject matter expertise.
Right.
So all the products that I'm talking about, we built with people who were specializing in those areas, and they were running these tests or trying to teach this in a separate form essentially. And then we used that to see as a comparison point to the results that we got using a video game. So for example, in the anti-corruption investigation training for law enforcement, people were sitting in classrooms and, listening to lectures and trying to learn that way.
Okay.
Now, people were restricted in terms of the physical space because only 25-30 people could learn at a time. Today, investigators or anybody joining that that line of work is much younger than they were before. And as we all know, a human attention span is 15 minutes or lesser now. So taking this knowledge where you're getting bored probably, right, and then having to do it in the field was getting very, very difficult. But when we converted that entire thing into a Sherlock Holmes style, fun game, it motivated people essentially, and the results in terms of the amount of cases that were more successfully solved as a real hard metric is an example of how we were doing that comparison. So again, just to bring it back to your original question, we had very concrete metrics that were scientific, and we had subject matter experts in those areas of specialty and psychology to see the comparison versus trying to do this theoretically.
Understood. So, Arad, one more thing. Now, let's shift to report to earn that you're wearing right now. I want you to tell me what exactly is this report to earn?
Sure. So, we live in a world, irrespective of the country that we live in, where there's a lot of things that happen around us that we complain about and don't do anything about, or we basically get so busy in our lives that we start unseeing things that are affecting us directly. What do I mean by that? It could be something as simple as trash or littering that is happening around us. It could be potholes that we encounter on the streets.
Okay.
It could be a broken street lamp or a footpath. It could be a protest that is going on the street, or it could be even crimes. And today what we end up doing is we either don't care and we move on with our lives, or we stop, take out our frustration, and then we move on, or we take out our smartphones, take a video or a picture of it, and put it on X, formerly known as Twitter, or any other platform to get some likes out of it. Report to earn is the idea that instead of collecting this data and putting it on social media and creating biases, we are trying to create what I call as the proof of truth. So report to earn is a platform that goes by the saying, see something, earn something, that takes citizen journalism to the next level, where anything that is affecting you, your neighborhoods, society around you can be put onto this platform with pictures, videos, etc. It does not go live until individuals who are unrelated to you get a notification and have to come in and identify and validate the same report using their own pictures, videos, evidence. Once a certain threshold has been met for different types of reports, whether it's environmental, crime, service, etc., then as a reward mechanism, everybody who successfully did that gets points. These points can be converted into things that directly are valuable to you. So for deals, discounts, coffee, shopping, etc., through various reward partners. Or for the people who are more excited, or the newer generations, you can convert this into a cryptocurrency that we're building, which allows them to become a part of an ecosystem that is built on top of this platform called Duty Warriors, and that is essentially a video game. So going back to where I started with Skyless Game Studios, if you're familiar with Pokemon Go, where people were going ahead and forming teams and collecting Pokemon, now people can proudly compete at the neighborhood levels or the country levels or the state levels, essentially, to make their society the most aware of these different things that are happening around. Now we collect these data points and we share them with non-profits, with government partners, with citizens, where citizens can take action. And again, the idea is turn the report to earn eventually into act to earn, using validated, true data points that are not giving any bias on a political, on a gender, or any side. Final step, once we have this information, we are going to build an artificial intelligence model around this to do analytics for predictive stuff, right? Which means you could predict infrastructure issues or bridges collapsing before they do, which is a major issue as an example, or flooding, which is happening, not just at a national media level. You could know in real time
local level.
Exactly, if there's flooding going on outside right now or not. So these are just examples of the use cases, but it's very broad.
Understood. Arad, what made you think that we need this at the very first place? What is that?
So I think identifying the problem is very important. And the core issue here is that we are getting very desensitized to things that are happening around us. Like I said, crimes is the extreme case, but just things that we take for granted, or, as we say, unfortunately, the chalta hai attitude. We want to change that in a way that society becomes better and we can leverage, I would say, self-accountability and take pride in it to make these changes. And it starts off local, but then it turns into a country, and then it turns into the globe. So the fundamental is to wake up people and to reward them for being good citizens, essentially. That's the real motivation behind it.
I was just waiting for some element of fake news as well, because sometimes the fake things are being transmitted and being shared in a locality, creating a chaos in a community or something like that. So do we have this aspect in mind as well?
Absolutely. That is our secret sauce, if I want to call it, is that you could see this information on any other social media platform. But what we're doing uniquely is that we're leveraging blockchain technology to make sure that every data point that is collected is recorded, right? So it cannot be hacked or broken in. You cannot go with 5 of your friends to create a narrative, because the algorithm picks you based on your previous credibility, performance, etc. So think maybe like Wikipedia, right? Maybe people can change things in Wikipedia, but it gets self-moderated very quickly. That's the fundamental. And to your point, essentially, you cannot drive a particular narrative from just a specific angle. So the truth is only there when unrelated people go ahead and verify it individually, essentially, which helps in cracking/solving fake news. And only then these reports go live, which means as somebody who's not participating in the report or the validation cycle, you still will have a map which says, look, these are the different types of things that are happening in my neighborhood at a real-time level.
Last question, but I don't think that this is the most important, is how you're taking care of the privacy. Like, what are the things that you are taking? Because something, for example, a crime happened and I reported it. A few of the people in the neighboring things, they just supported the whole thing, and it's a true thing, came to know, but there's a group of some goons or something. And from that perspective, it's a very lame example, but just an example. The privacy part, how are you taking care of that?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that question. It is also one of our unique aspects that unless it is something very serious, in which case, of course, we would have to work with the laws of the land. For most of the type of reporting, by default, the reporting is anonymized. So you can opt in to say that I'm the one who reported it, and your avatar can, gain those points and stuff like that. But generally speaking, by default, the report in itself is anonymized. The content of the report is publicly available on the blockchain, so it has a transparency essentially. But it does not have any personally identifying data at all. by
So
default.
do you think it is going to affect the authenticity at some point?
So again, this is where we're leveraging the blockchain technology because it cannot be broken in that sense, right? And this is where we're using a combination of multiple unrelated factors. So if 7 unrelated people, as an example, say this is the truth, given their reports, right? And like I said, you cannot choose the people.
Right.
That crowdsourcing is what is creating that credibility of trust without necessarily requiring somebody to put their name to it, which also increases the chances of people reporting more things because nobody wants to spend time with the cops or authorities, as an example, unless, like I said, it is something which is very important. So,
Right.
of course, it will be modified for the lay of the land. But generally speaking, fundamentally, today it is completely opt-in terms of the reports. People might want to put their name because they want to take credit or be recognized by the government for reporting certain things. That's absolutely up to them. Now, theoretically speaking, when people go ahead and redeem their rewards and people want to really find a trace, they could. But again, the concept behind it is that the people who want to take action should know that they are not wasting their time, energy, money because they're coming up with credible information to act upon, necessarily versus the person or individual.
Understood.
And that's the idea, is that you create that crowdsourcing as a fundamental for the truth to act upon necessarily rather than singling out an individual, if that makes sense.
Arad, I just want to extend it at the extreme last of it.
Yeah.
One part of privacy is about that where someone wants to create an avatar or something like that. One part says you as a service provider has the data of the people, those who are providing the information. What about that data?
Yeah, so that's again a very good question. We are collecting very, very minimal data, which is either a cell phone number or an email. Right?
That works for the most of the things.
Exactly. Other than that, we're not collecting any other personal information, and the rest of the data, like the actual reporting and the pictures, the videos, evidence, that is all available on the blockchain itself. So it is publicly available. It's not data that we are holding or we are hosting.
Not about that data. I'm talking about that number or the mail IDs, which even just for the starters, which you're taking.
Sure.
So up to what extent we are thinking of the privacy for that matter? Because we have seen in the past time that these data were being sold, these data were being used, were being manipulated.
Yeah.
Right. So from that perspective, how like secure your thing is?
Yeah, and of course, there's layers of cybersecurity to make sure we're using the modern encryption standards and also complying with.
It's not about hacking. It's not about hacking. What I'm talking about is what if one day power player comes to the picture and you want it to go into a particular vertical or a particular area, and there is someone with the power who holds it, or an individual, or for that matter, I'll say the government even. Mm-hmm. The government comes to you and asks for the data for some reasons, for something which is very hideous and happened. So, what do you have a roadmap for it? How exactly you're going to work on it? And at the same time, are you going to share it with the users?
So, again, remember that what we're collecting is very minimal. We're not collecting anything else other than what any other social media platform is collecting, essentially. So we're not reinventing the wheel here, right? The challenge that you're talking about is the same challenge that we have with an X or Twitter or a WhatsApp. So we will see the mistakes that they've made, essentially, and make sure we don't repeat those mistakes, and have whatever those compliance standards are. We're going to have at least the same standards, if not more. That's a starting point. And the second element of that is that the reality of the world we live in is that privacy to a certain extent is a myth.
Right. Privacy in democracy is a myth. I understand that.
Exactly. So our phones are already,
rigged and all.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that, I'm not taking that data. I am taking data that people are already providing on other platforms.
Right.
But I'm actually rewarding people rather than taking the data and selling it to a third party.
But the thing is, just by presenting this particular argument forward, the democracy and privacy summit, we cannot actually, because here we're talking about some changes that we're thinking of bringing to the society. So why can't we start from this very pedestal at the very starting of it?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Sure, but see, there has to be some kind of a unique identifier to every individual, right? And that's just the nature of technology. That's fundamental.
As a user, see, these whole questions are coming as a user.
Yes.
Because I won't allow anyone to use my data for anything. And if I'm doing something which is betterment of the society and I'm getting all the spam calls or the mails or anything, for that matter I'm talking, from that perspective, because I don't even want to go down to the whole this agreement and everything that these apps and all have, no? Except all the need to skip to the next part that way. So that's exactly where I'm coming from. But thank you so much for all the things that you just mentioned, and specifically, Radhya, that quotient of understanding for the social good that you've brought to this whole area, this whole world of video games specifically, because we grew up, millennials, right, grew up in a phase where these things were getting introduced and we were being stopped from doing it. But it's not that feasible in current era. The students, the kids going to use it. The only thing is how to make it more sustainable and usable for them. So thank you so much for bringing that.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
तो ये सुना आपने पूरा इंटरव्यू, जिसमें काफ़ी सारी बातें हुई, और अगर आपको लगता है कि अभी भी, जैसे हमने लास्ट अंत में कहा, प्रिवेसी और डेमोक्रेसी समित वो बड़े ही निजी विचार हैं और उन्हें रखने की स्वतंत्रता हमारे पास है, वैसे ही किसी भी गेम को, वीडियो गेम को खेलते समय स्वतंत्रता आपके पास होती है कि आप उससे क्या सीख रहे हैं, मगर फिर भी एक जिम्मेदारी होती है उस क्रिएटर की भी कि वो आपको कितने हक हुकूक उसमें दे रहा है, कितना आपके पास क्षमताएं हैं। इसी के बारे में काफ़ी पूरा इंटरव्यू रहा, उसके बारे में बातचीत हुई। आने वाले समय में रिपोर्ट टू अर्न इंडिया में आने वाला है, शायद 2-1 महीनों में। अभी जो प्लान है, आई एम नॉट कमिटिंग समथिंग, मगर अगर ये आता है तो आप भी इसका हिस्सा हो सकते हैं। और मैंने प्रिवेसी और सिक्योरिटी के बारे में बात की है, तो आई डोंट थिंक यू आर सपोज्ड टू बी वरीड अबाउट दैट फ्रॉम दैट एस्पेक्ट। बाकी तब तक के लिए देखते रहिए MSTV। नमस्कार।